All right, to start us off again, Mr. Cord. How do you see the Constitution when it comes to whether or not it's a living, breathing document that adjusts over time as we see fit, as opposed to it being a document that we need to have strict adherence to?
Well, it is a little bit of both, honestly. If you think about it, when the Constitution was first ratified, we had our Bill of Rights, which was the first 10 amendments. And since then, we've added more amendments on. And in that aspect of it, it is, in a sense, a living document because it does have the capacity to change. If we need to amend, we have the ability. But when you get into, I think it's me. When you get into the actual sections of the document, those aren't up for changing. And those need to be adhered to as if they were carved in stone and set in front of every single person's office. The enumerated powers is something that every congressperson should know, and they should know they're not allowed to violate. And going back to whether or not they need to cite a specific constitutional aspect that gives them the right to pass a bill, that should always be the case. Because they're not allowed to do things that they're not granted the power to do. The 9th and 10th Amendment tells us so. The 10th Amendment says anything that's not, that the Congress doesn't have the power to do in its enumerated powers falls to the states or to the individual. And the 9th Amendment says that Congress cannot despair or disparage or deny any rights via the enumerated powers that are for the individual. Got like 2 seconds left.
Thank you. Ms. Van, what do you think Congress should do to fight and limit illegal immigration?
What do I think Congress should do to fight? And I didn't hear the second part of the question. I apologize.
Limit illegal immigration.
Fight and limit illegal immigration. Well, first of all, we have the laws and the regulations on the books. We need to use them. We have the technology to protect our borders, along with using a fencing system, and we have programs in place that we can use right now. We need to decentralize the immigration office and bring them out into areas, especially into the border states, so that the backlog is not in D.C., but we are handling it more on a state level. And the one thing we need to do is have an extremely strong guest worker program. I would argue that the Bracero program worked for parts, but it didn't work because the government stole the workers' money when they went back home. So we need a good guest worker program that prevents that from happening. With the technology in the banking system, we can more than create a very strong guest worker program. People who come to this country because they want the same dream that you and I have and that we have for our children. And they want to do the jobs and work hard and do things that we won't do. All sectors of our industry thrive off these folks. So we need to be respectful, and they need to be respectful of our laws. So we need to put a good program in place to facilitate that.
Mr. Carlos, how do you think the Congress can best help get the economy back on track?
Oh, get out of the way. I feel like Ron Paul. No, but really, I mean, they're just ridiculous. I wish I could remember Reagan's line. Was it Congress never saw? No, what was it? If it's moving taxes, hold on, I'm going to coordinate. Go ahead.
Congress doesn't fix the problems. Congress is the problem.
That's a good one, but he had another one. Yeah. So if it's moving taxes, if it keeps moving, oh no, that's great. Exactly, subsidy. That's the point, though. I mean, they go to Washington, they think they got it all figured out, especially the senators and people in the president's administration have never been in a private sector, and they want to help us and hold us by the hand and show us how to earn a profit. They just need to get out of the way. We need to seriously reduce the regulatory burden, both in D.C. and in Sacramento, and let private entrepreneurs who know how to make money, let the ones who don't know how to make money fail and go to work for the ones that do know how to make money. We need to lower the tax burden, both in Sacramento and in D.C., and the country will take care of itself. We'll be fine if they'll just get out of our way and get off our back.
Mr. Ray, what is your stance on the Second Amendment, gun control, and do you think that Operation Fast and Furious, the gun running operation,
It was a complete success. If you're from Mexico.
I was going to ask if it was a success.
According to the drug cartel, hey, they're waiting for the next one.
When the Emperor of Japan was getting ready to attack America, Admiral Yamada, traveling extensively in the West, very politely told me you might want to give that a second thought. He said, why? He said, because if you're successful, at some point you will have to attack the mainland. And he said, behind every blade of grass is an American with a gun that knows how to use it. I have a friend of mine who's a big gun guy. He said, Gene, you know what they call 911 in a town where there's gun control and nobody's armed? I said, what? He goes, dial a prayer. And I thought about it. There was a Marine Corps colonel, retired, who wrote a beautiful article about an 80-year-old couple that a couple of young guys broke into their house that had broken in and murdered other people, and how he was able to defend himself. Every study that I've ever seen shows that in towns where there is not gun control and people are allowed to arm themselves, the crime rate is lower. It's as simple as that. I've sat down with people that are just hugely against gun control, and by the time I'm done with them, they have to admit it makes sense. You should, Americans have the right to do it.
Mr. Phelps, how important do you view the 10th Amendment to be, and do you feel that the federal government has infringed upon that right?
Yeah, if you could all do me a favor and turn around and look at my nice big freedom curve back there, right on the wall. To me, being a math guy, I got my degree in math, I try to make things as simply understood as possible. The Constitution made this country great. It gave us the freedoms, the opportunities, the prosperity. Because what it did was it limited government. It said, this is all you can do. It put you in charge of your life. You are the king or the queen of your life, not the government. Now, we do need some government to protect our rights. And that's the left side of my curve over there. Some government going up, more rights as government starts up. And the top of that curve is the minimum amount of government for the most amount of freedom. That American brand of freedom. That is what the 10th Amendment is all about. Because when we neglect it, ignore it, deny it, then we start going further down that curve. The size of government grows, and our freedoms start to fade. Our rights, our opportunities, our American dream starts to fade. The 10th Amendment was put there very deliberately to keep the size of federal government from getting too large. We have to follow it. We have to elect people that are true to it, and will use it to fight back against this growth of government that has taken away our freedoms, rights, and prosperity. Thank you.
Mr. Schauer, do you feel that Obamacare is constitutional?
Absolutely not. No. We have right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We do not need a government telling us we must buy a program. You have the right to make up. If you don't want to have health insurance and you want to take that risk, that's your right. If you want massive insurance and you want to buy it on the market, that's your right. Uncle Sam is not your uncle. Right now, he's forcing something on us that is absolutely wrong. When I was a kid, it cost $12 to see a doctor. And that of course, wages were $1.50 an hour. But nevertheless, we went in there, and my dad kept Farm Bureau insurance for catastrophic problems if you got hospitalized. Otherwise, you just paid the $12 to see a doctor. We need massive tort reform to stop all the suits for all the liability problems with malpractice, so our doctors can now be doctors again, and the companies that supply the bandages can be companies that supply bandages again, and the companies that help the medical field do it again. But we're never going to do that if we have a bigger bureaucracy now with the federal government controlling our health care. Talk about the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Mr. Ray, are there any departments or programs in the federal budget that you feel specifically should be eliminated or significantly reduced to help reduce the overall size of our government?
To be honest with you, that'd be something I'd have to analyze, but I'm pretty sure right off the bat, the Department of Energy, which was created to help generate energy and reduce our costs, that has completely failed. There's several hundreds of billions of dollars being rid of. The Federal Department of Education has got to go and get that back to the local areas in the states. Detroit has a 70% dropout rate. Does that make any sense? It costs $270,000 to get an inept teacher in New York fired. So they generally just stick them in this one building and they just keep paying them because it's more trouble to fire them. And the dog biting the dog here, it's just gotten bizarre. No, I mean there are a number of areas that that can be cut down and sent back into the states, and areas where the government has just gotten so bloated, and with high salaries and stuff, there are a lot of guys getting paid. It's hard to figure out what they do. And if you start analyzing, you can always take a look at something. One of the things when an incumbent runs is you take a look at what he's accomplished. That should be, a good incumbent should have an easy chance to win because he's done some wonderful things. When two things happen when you run against an incumbent, one is he's going to change the subject from his record, and two, if you're doing really well, he's going to attack you personally. Then you know exactly who you are, you know who you're dealing with at that point. Somebody off the left.
Ms. Van, same question. Are there any specific departments or programs you feel should be eliminated or reduced to help lower the size of government?
Well, of the 15 secretariat departments, I would say 14 of them need to take a pretty big haircut. Department of Veterans Affairs aside, the rest of them need to be looked at. The federal government is micromanaging us. They are taking every little ounce of our lives and managing it from a 30,000-foot level. That needs to stop. So all departments can be reduced in size if we push the governing and reduce the governing. Push it back down, the things that need to be done, back down to local and state control. Even though in this state, I would really hate to have our state doing some of these things. But pushing it back down to local control is where things get done. The way our federal transportation dollars are sent to DC and then allocated back out to us at the local level to actually do the road repairs is absolutely a joke. You aren't getting what you pay for in your transportation system, but yet you continue to pay your taxes to the feds, but it's not coming back to here so the locals can do what they need to do. Everything would be on the table. Everything needs to be looked at and analyzed, and we need to reduce the size of government, period, and restructure the services that we as a people decide that we want for ourselves and our government, not someone telling us what we have to have out of our government.
Mr. Tubbs, what is your opinion about earmarks? Do you think that they are a good thing, a bad thing, or should we even have them at all?
For far too long, our politicians, and I do say that with a little bit of a smirk, have won elections by promising government goodies. What can I give you to make sure you vote for me? And earmarks are a part of that political process, if you will. Now, for a long time, it worked out kind of okay. Certain things got built in the district, and people back home appreciated that. George Miller bridges were built with his name on it. Nothing with Garamendi yet, and hopefully not. But it was politicians using your tax dollars so they stayed in their seats. That has got to stop. And that kind of gets back to what I talked about earlier on balancing the budget. We have to stop voting for the politician that's going to promise you the government goodie to keep them in office. It's the ones that are going to say, I'm not going to keep spending your money out of control. I'm going to spend your money wisely. I'm going to think about your tax dollars as if they were my own and be a fiscal conservative, responsible with what you're entrusting me with. Earmarks are a violation of that trust. If there is something that needs to be done in District 3 for us, then put it in a bill where it belongs and let it be voted on. Defend it, which I will. When you talk about some of the bases we need to defend, one I work at, one I'm very familiar with, Beal, those kinds of things are fine. Fight for them, put them in a bill, let the Congress vote on them. But these slippery earmarks are a betrayal of trust. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, farm subsidies. What do you think about it?
Folks, this is one we need to fix, and we need to fix quick. If you're a farmer out here, listen up. We've been farming since the 1880s. We get subsidies. Subsidies are bad. Subsidies used to be a program that came mostly out of the 50s because the farm prices dropped so low that the farmers were all going broke and we had the farm block. So they would then give you an allotment. If you stayed in that allotment and only grew so much rice or whatever you're going to grow, and the worldwide price didn't come up to a certain level that you would go broke, the government would make up the difference. But they have evolved. They've evolved from a price efficiency program to a farm flexibility payment program to now it's a direct payment. It's almost not even rice-based. I've got rice-based. I get about $400 a year. I'm not a big farmer in rice, but I don't even have to grow the rice to get it. It's become a system where we're getting paid to not do it simply because it's in there and people have kept it. And if you're a farmer, listen up. This is going to be a big issue over the next few months because I'm going to make it an issue. If you're a farmer, we need to get this thing fixed and fixed quick because the taxpayers are going to take it away from you if you don't get it fixed because the taxpayers will help you. But we don't need farmers getting these huge subsidies the way they are. Right now, prices are through the roof, and farmers are getting subsidies through the roof as usual. It's in the millions. Did you know the top 10% of farmers get 75% of all the payments? And of that, it's averaging $30,000 a year per farm. That means his wife, his son, his daughter. 80% make less than $600 a year per farmer. That's wrong. That needs to get fixed. Or you, the taxpayer, should take it away from them. And I just made some farmers mad, but it's got to be said.
Mr. Carlos, do you think the current level of regulation and government intervention helps or hurts the economy?
Oh, I can't think of any government regulation that helps the economy. It all hurts the economy. It's just sometimes it's something we're willing to accept because we don't want toxic water or things like that. But anytime you put artificial restraints and regulations on the free market from the federal government, it's going to make it harder for that producer or entrepreneur or business to do business. And we're a democracy, so sometimes we think it's acceptable. There's some regulations we'll live with, but Sacramento, again, and D.C. have just gone crazy with the regulations and with the environmental lobbying and with, the amount of regulations they pass is mind-boggling. Just if anybody owns a business in here or has to deal with Sacramento or D.C. with respect to their, the regulatory schemes in their business, you know what I'm talking about. So, was the question, are any of them good? What was the question?
Do they help the economy? Do they help us?
No, they're terrible.